The question when will you find your soulmate is usually answered with meaningless advice: improve yourself, lower your standards, or the timing isn't right yet. All of these are wrong. The problem isn't that you're not good enough or your standards are too high. The problem is that most of us are looking for love from a completely misguided psychological position. Carl Jung pointed this out: you cannot truly love anyone until you become a complete individual. Not perfect in the conventional sense, but having made peace with your shadow, understanding your unconscious motivations, and most importantly, no longer needing love to feel whole. The most exceptional women are often the loneliest because they're trying too hard. They believe that if they're good enough, love will come. But good enough by whose standards? And why does trying to become lovable make them harder to love? Jung didn't provide formulas because there are no formulas. Instead, he outlined psychological processes that each person must go through in their own way. This is harder but also more real. To understand this perspective more deeply, we need to explore each area Jung considered necessary. These aren't sequential steps, but parallel aspects that need to be developed. Each process requires the courage to face parts of ourselves we usually avoid. But it's through this confrontation that we can love and be loved from a place of wholeness. Criterion 1. Understand yourself first. Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams; who looks inside, awakes. Carl Jung: most women have lists of what they want in men: at least 5 feet 9 inches, stable job, funny, mature, good communicator. But few have lists of what they want from themselves. This is the problem. You can't know who you're compatible with if you don't know who you are. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly complex. Most of us think we understand ourselves, but we only understand what we want others to see. Many women say they want men who are mature, but they themselves still react like children when rejected. They want to be respected but don't respect their own boundaries, always saying yes when they want to say no. They seek good communication but avoid every difficult conversation about emotions, past, or real aspirations. Jung called this the process of individuation, becoming the complete human being you were born to be. This includes confronting the parts you hate about yourself, the fears you don't want to acknowledge, and the motivations you're not even conscious of. Women say they want equality in relationships, but unconsciously still expect men to take initiative in almost everything. They want independence but feel hurt when their partner doesn't guess their needs. These contradictions aren't their fault. Everyone has internal contradictions. The problem is when we're not conscious of them. The right question isn't what do I want in a man, but what do I want in life? What am I most afraid of? What do I need to feel safe and loved? And more importantly, how much of these needs can I meet myself? Jung believed you cannot truly love anyone until you work with your shadow, the parts you reject, suppress, or project onto others. The shadow isn't just bad traits. It also includes undeveloped potential, suppressed desires, and parts you think you're not allowed to express. Many women's shadow is anger, taught to be good and sweet. They don't know how to express healthy displeasure. Result: either suppressing until explosive, or expressing anger indirectly through coldness, criticism, manipulation. Another shadow might be selfishness. Afraid of being called selfish, they always put others' needs first. But when they don't know how to care for themselves, they become resentful, exhausted, and ultimately a burden to others. Integrating the shadow doesn't mean becoming a bad person. It means being honest with all emotions and needs. When you accept your angry part, you know how to set clear and respectable boundaries. When you accept your selfish part, You know how to care for yourself to have energy for loved ones. Women who don't do this work often fall into destructive patterns. They're attracted to people who can't give them what they truly need, because they don't know what they need. Or they push away good people because these people trigger parts of themselves they haven't accepted. When you can do this, something magical happens. You stop attracting people who reflect the parts of yourself you haven't accepted, and start attracting people who can see and love all of you, both light and shadow. This process never ends. Self-understanding is a lifelong journey, with new layers discovered as you mature. But the foundation, knowing who you are at your core, understanding your real motivations and needs, is a prerequisite for any relationship that can survive and thrive. Most importantly, you can't understand yourself through thinking. You must observe behavior, reactions, and patterns in actual relationships. You say you want someone honest, but can you be honest about your fears and needs? You want someone committed, but are you committed to developing yourself and overcoming difficulties? When you begin to understand yourself at this level, not just what you like or dislike, but the deep motivations driving your behavior, you'll realize that most of the criteria you have for a partner are actually projections of what you need to develop in yourself. Criterion 2, stop looking for the perfect person. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Carl Jung. The most dangerous illusion of our time is believing that somewhere there's a perfect template for love that you just need to copy. You see a couple who looks happy and think, I want that too. But Jung warns, this is precisely the path to disappointment. The problem isn't having standards. The problem is when those standards don't arise from deep self-knowledge but from copying what looks good in others. This creates a disconnect between your real self and the kind of love you're seeking. Women who are always attracted to men with issues, addiction, emotional instability, unwillingness to commit, usually know this isn't good, so they create opposite lists: stable, reliable, ready to commit. But when they meet such people, they feel bored and lack strong attraction. This isn't coincidence. It's the unconscious at work. Maybe they grew up in unstable families and unconsciously see that as love. Maybe they confuse drama with passion, anxiety with excitement. Or maybe they're so afraid of real intimacy that they choose people who can't give them that. Until they understand this motivation, forcing themselves to choose good people only leads to artificial relationships. You might maintain it for a while, but the lack of real connection will eventually break everything apart. Jung believed each soul has a unique structure. Some people need more personal space. Some thrive on variety more than stability. Some develop best when not responsible for anyone else's happiness. This doesn't mean they're broken or immature. It means they have different psychological structures and need to find the kind of love that fits that structure. Forcing them into common molds is like forcing left-handed people to write with their right hand, possible but never natural. Women who spend decades trying to fix themselves to fit society's expectations of love often experience deep exhaustion. They go to therapy to learn commitment, read books about how to love correctly, and try to feel satisfied with healthy relationships that lack deep connection. They feel something's wrong with them because they can't appreciate what everyone says is good for them. When they finally accept their true nature, perhaps needing more independence than most, or having a different way of loving, they find real happiness. Sometimes that means being alone and feeling more peaceful than in a right relationship that's wrong for them. Jung said forcing yourself into unsuitable molds is the cause of psychological disorders. Applied to love, trying to feel attracted to people who are right in theory but wrong for you only creates internal discord and eventually leads to breakdown. This doesn't mean following what feels right blindly. Feelings can be distorted by unhealed wounds and unhealthy patterns. But it also means you need to understand more deeply about your true nature and what actually nourishes your soul. The important question isn't what kind of person is good, but what do I really need to thrive? What kind of energy makes me feel alive? What can I give authentically without depleting myself? The answer might surprise you. Maybe you need someone who challenges rather than comforts. Maybe you need someone as independent as you rather than someone who wants to spend all their time with you. Maybe you need someone with strong individual passions rather than someone who makes you the center of their life. The hard truth is many women are attracted to relationship patterns that don't actually suit them because that's what they see celebrated. They want love that's beautiful by external standards rather than love that truly nourishes their souls. The process of breaking these expectations requires great courage. It means being willing to disappoint family, friends, or society to be true to your real self. It means being willing to be alone rather than in an unsuitable relationship just to avoid judgment. But the reward is enormous. When you stop trying to fit others' ideas of right love, you create space for love that truly fits you. And that kind of love, when it comes, will feel like coming home rather than like a struggle to maintain. Criterion 3, heal the past. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. Carl Jung. Forget the past and focus on the future. This sounds good but is completely wrong according to Jung. The past isn't something to get over but to understand and integrate. Unprocessed wounds don't disappear, they silently control present choices like invisible puppets, making us repeat patterns we swore we'd never repeat. Healing doesn't mean forgive and forget. It means understanding how past experiences shaped how you view love, safety, and self-worth. When you understand these patterns, you can choose whether to continue them instead of being controlled by them. There are 3 common types of shadow that women bring into relationships. Victim shadow. These women are always attracted to people who treat them badly. Not because they like being hurt, but because they unconsciously see that as love. Growing up with harsh, distant, or emotionally unpredictable parents, they learn that love always comes with pain. When someone treats them well, they feel strange and suspicious of motives, or simply don't feel strong connection. Savior shadow. These women only feel valuable when saving someone. Attracted to people with problems, addiction, depression, financial instability, because it gives them a sense of being needed and purposeful. But when their partner is actually healthy and doesn't need saving, they lose their role and become confused about their value in the relationship. Control shadow. These women are so afraid of vulnerability that they try to control every aspect of the relationship. They need to know where their partner is, what they're doing, what they're thinking at all times. They interpret this as caring, but it's actually deep-seated fear of abandonment or betrayal eating into the unconscious from past betrayals. What's important to understand is that each type of shadow originates from legitimate wounds in the past. A child in a violent family will learn to survive by becoming quiet, withdrawn, not drawing attention to avoid harm. Or they learn to constantly try to please everyone, hoping that if they're good enough, the violence will stop. A child who is abandoned or betrayed will learn to control their environment so they never have to experience that pain again. They become perfectionists, always vigilant for any signs of rejection or change. These defense mechanisms weren't just reasonable but necessary for the child's survival. The problem is when we bring these mechanisms into adulthood and apply them in situations that are no longer dangerous. Healing according to Jung isn't getting over wounds but integrating them. It means understanding how they protected you in the past, acknowledging they were once necessary, but then deciding whether you want to continue using those defense mechanisms in new situations. For someone who grew up with an untrustworthy father, not trusting men was a reasonable and necessary protective mechanism. But if you bring that attitude into every relationship at age 30, it will prevent experiencing authentic love. Healing means recognizing, this distrust protected me as a child, but now it's holding me back. Healing also happens at physiological and energetic levels. Many wounds are stored in the body: chronic tension in shoulders and neck, shallow breathing, or feeling disconnected from your own emotions. Your nervous system might be stuck in constant alert mode, making you react to good people as if they were threats. When you learn to regulate your nervous system, through deep breathing, meditation, or other forms of healing, you can be with good people without automatically triggering fight or flight responses. You can feel safe in intimacy instead of anxious about when it will end. The most important thing to understand about healing: it doesn't mean becoming a perfect person with no issues. It means understanding your issues, knowing when they're triggered, and having the ability to communicate about them maturely with a partner. The right man for you isn't someone who never makes you sensitive; that's impossible and unhealthy. It's someone who can be with you when you feel wounded, not trying to fix you but also not leaving, and helping you find your way back to balance. The healing process often requires facing memories and emotions you've spent your whole life avoiding. It means feeling pain you've numbed, acknowledging losses you've never mourned, and sometimes forgiving people where forgiveness feels like self-betrayal. But on the other side of this process is freedom. Freedom from being controlled by the past. Freedom to love and be loved from a place of wholeness rather than deficit. Freedom to choose partners based on who they really are, rather than based on old wounds they might heal or trigger. This is the most important work a person can do, not just for love but for their entire life. Because when you heal the past, you don't just change your future, you break cycles of pain that could be passed through generations. You become a woman who can love from fullness rather than from lack. Criterion 4: Emotional independence. I cannot love anyone if I hate myself. That is the reason why we feel so extremely uncomfortable in the presence of people who are noted for their special virtuousness. Carl Jung: the phrase "love yourself" has become such a hollow cliché that it's lost meaning. Most advice about this is shallow and sometimes harmful. Treat yourself like you would treat your best friend. Say kind words to yourself. It sounds good but doesn't touch the core issue. Jung understood that the relationship with yourself is far more complex. You can't simply decide to love yourself like deciding to like a food. This relationship is built over years of experience, and changing it requires deeper work than positive affirmations. Emotional independence doesn't mean not needing anyone. It means not needing anyone else to feel okay about yourself. This difference is extremely important. When emotionally independent, you love someone because you want to be with them, not because you need them to feel valuable. Signs that you haven't achieved emotional independence are often subtle and hard to recognize. You accept disrespectful behavior to keep the peace. This shows you fear conflict more than you value dignity. You believe that if someone is angry or disappointed with you, it's your fault and must be fixed. You'd rather suffer silently than face the possibility that someone might leave. You constantly worry about what others think. This isn't just normal concern but real obsession. You analyze every word, gesture for signs someone doesn't like you. When someone acts cold or different, you automatically assume you did something wrong rather than thinking they might be having a bad day. You can't be alone without feeling unsafe. When no one texts or calls for a few hours, you start creating scenarios in your head about everyone forgetting you. When home alone on weekends, instead of enjoying the quiet, you feel abandoned. You frequently need external validation. Am I doing this right? Do you love me? Do I look beautiful? These questions become habits, as if you need others to constantly remind you that you have value. These signs don't mean you're weak or lack confidence. They mean you haven't learned to self-regulate emotionally but depend on others to maintain internal stability. This is the result of growing up in emotionally unsafe environments where love was conditional and acceptance depended on good behavior. Jung also warns about another dangerous trap: perfectionism in loving yourself. Some women think they must love every part of themselves before deserving to be loved by someone. They wait for the day they become good enough, confident enough, successful enough, beautiful enough, interesting enough. But that day never comes because the standard of enough constantly changes. Real self-love means accepting your whole self, both parts you like and dislike. It means being able to say I'm sometimes selfish and I accept that instead of I'll try never to be selfish again. It means understanding that your flaws are also part of the complete human being. One of the biggest misunderstandings about self-love is thinking it means always supporting every decision you make. Actually, self-love sometimes means saying no to immediate desires to serve long-term interests. It means respecting yourself enough to set boundaries, including with yourself. People who truly love themselves don't need to constantly affirm it. They don't need to prove to anyone, including themselves, that they are worthy of love. They know this at a cellular level, like how they know they need to breathe or eat. This creates a powerful kind of attraction. Women who are comfortable with themselves have something others don't: they don't need anyone else to feel complete. This doesn't make them cold or distant; on the contrary, it allows them to love freely and authentically. When you don't need someone to feel okay about yourself, you can love them for who they are, not for what they can do for you. You can give without expectation, share without fear of loss, and commit without feeling trapped. The process of developing emotional independence requires learning to become a good parent to yourself. This means knowing when you need self-discipline and when you need self-compassion. Knowing when you need to challenge yourself and when you need to rest. Knowing how to comfort yourself during difficult times without waiting for someone else to do it. It also means learning to trust your ability to handle difficulties. Instead of avoiding every situation that might cause pain, you develop resilience. You know that whatever happens, you'll find a way through. Most importantly, emotional independence doesn't mean isolation or autism. It doesn't mean you don't need anyone or don't want to share life with someone. It means you choose to share from a position of fullness rather than deficit. When you achieve true emotional independence, you'll attract people who also have this quality. You'll create relationships based on choice rather than dependency, on love rather than need, on mutual growth rather than filling gaps in each other. Criterion 5. Accept the factors of luck and timing until you make the unconscious conscious. It will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung in our I Control Everything culture, acknowledging the role of luck and timing in love is almost like cursing. We want to believe that if we do enough right things, results will be guaranteed. But Jung understood life is far more complex and mysterious than that. Jung's concept of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences, points out that there are forces beyond our control operating in our lives. You meet the right person at the wrong time, or meet the wrong person just when you need to learn an important lesson. These things aren't completely random, but they're also not completely directed by you. Many women have done everything right according to books, gone to therapy, developed themselves, expanded social circles, tried new activities, used dating apps, but still haven't met the right person. They feel frustrated and wonder what they did wrong. The answer might be, nothing. There are factors completely beyond control: geography, economic circumstances, timing in people's life cycles, even major social upheavals. You might be perfect for someone, but they're in a phase focused on building their career. Or you live somewhere lacking people with similar values and vision. This doesn't mean you should sit and hope for luck. It means you need to balance effort with letting go. Jung believed that when we work on inner development, becoming more whole, understanding ourselves deeper, we naturally attract more suitable circumstances and people. But there's a subtle trap here. Many women unconsciously create patterns that obstruct love without realizing it. Unworthy pattern, always attracted to people not ready to commit or truly invest in relationships. This isn't coincidence but the unconscious seeking situations that confirm deep beliefs that they don't deserve to be fully loved. They self-sabotage by choosing people who clearly can't give them what they want from the start. Savior pattern, only feeling valuable and important when saving someone from their problems. When they meet stable, emotionally healthy people, they feel bored and unnecessary. They've become so used to defining themselves through their ability to fix others that they don't know who they are when no one needs saving. Perfect pattern, constantly waiting for the perfect moment when everything in life is stable, job secure, finances solid, emotions completely balanced. But life is never perfect, and waiting for the ideal moment becomes a subtle way to avoid the risk of real intimacy. Too busy pattern, filling schedules with work, social activities, and personal projects to the point where there's no real time for love. They say they want to find someone but their behavior shows they're avoiding the possibility of having to share time and emotional space with someone. To recognize your unconscious patterns, you need to observe not just who you choose but how you behave in relationships. Do you tend to sabotage things when they become too good? Do you look for reasons to leave when someone shows real interest? Do you create drama when life becomes too peaceful and happy? Jung would say these patterns aren't your fault, they're often formed from early experiences and served protective purposes. But they are your responsibility to recognize and change. The unconscious will continue to direct your life until you make it conscious. Practical ways to work with unconscious patterns: journal about your relationships, not just recording events but emotions, thoughts, and reactions in each situation. After a while, you'll start seeing repeating patterns. Pay attention to feelings in your body when meeting different people. The body often knows what's good for you before the mind understands. If you feel tense or anxious around someone without clear reason, listen to that. Ask close friends about patterns they observe in your dating behavior. Sometimes outsiders can clearly see what we're blind to ourselves. Most importantly, don't use working with the unconscious as a way to avoid action in the real world. Overanalyzing can also be a form of avoiding intimacy. Sometimes you just need the courage to try new things, meet new people, and observe results without fully understanding the reason behind every emotion. Accepting the role of luck and timing means releasing the illusion of complete control without abandoning personal responsibility. You can't control when and where you'll meet the right person, but you can control becoming someone ready for love when it appears. This also means learning to trust life's process. Sometimes what we think is delay is actually necessary time for us to mature and become ready for the kind of love we truly need, rather than the kind we think we want. Criterion 6. Develop emotional intelligence. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Carl Jung. Real emotional intelligence isn't always staying calm or not letting emotions control you. Those are dangerous misunderstandings that have turned many women into emotional machines, trying to rationalize every feeling and suppress natural human responses. Jung understood that emotions contain valuable information about our inner and outer worlds. When someone irritates you intensely, it might reveal more about yourself than about them. This isn't consolation but a powerful tool for self-understanding. The phenomenon of shadow projection in dating works like this: the traits you react most strongly to in others are often traits you've suppressed or rejected in yourself. A woman who's always annoyed by selfish men might be suppressing her own legitimate needs and living a life of constant sacrifice for others. A woman who hates weak men might be rejecting her own vulnerable and needy parts. What's extremely important is learning to distinguish between real red flags and personal reactions based on the past. Red flags are objectively harmful behaviors: violence, deception, lack of respect for basic boundaries, inability to empathize. These are clear signs about character and you should stay away. But personal reactions are different. If you grew up with controlling, invasive parents, you might overreact when someone asks about your plans or wants to know where you are. That's not necessarily a red flag, it might just be normal concern or desire for connection. But if you don't understand the difference, you might push away people who genuinely care about you. Real emotional intelligence includes 3 stages: recognition: what am I feeling? Where does this emotion arise in my body? What's its intensity? What experience from the past does it remind me of? This stage requires stopping instead of reacting immediately. Understanding: what is this emotion trying to tell me? Is it a reaction to the current situation or to old memories? Is there useful information hidden in it? This is when you become a detective of yourself. Conscious choice: knowing this, how do I want to respond? What way would align with my values and long-term goals? Can I meet both emotional and practical needs? What's important to understand: you can't and shouldn't try to ignore or suppress emotions. The more you try to not feel, the stronger they become and explode in unhealthy ways. Instead, you need to learn to feel fully without letting them completely control your actions. In relationship contexts, this means, when you feel angry, instead of immediately blaming your partner or trying to extinguish the feeling, you stop and ask, what is this feeling trying to say? Could I be feeling disrespected? Or am I afraid of something? Which of my boundaries is being violated? When you feel anxious about the relationship, instead of immediately seeking reassurance from your partner or creating drama to test their feelings, you check whether this anxiety has a real basis or is just fear from past experiences. When you feel bored or disconnected, instead of automatically concluding your partner is not right, you ask whether you might be avoiding intimacy or need time to reconnect with yourself and what you really want. Jung believed that conflict in relationships isn't a sign of problems but an opportunity to understand each other deeper and grow. Perfect couples who never argue are often boring and unsustainable because they don't really know each other. They only know the polite and controlled versions of each other. Real love requires the ability to witness and be witnessed in imperfect moments, when angry, afraid, disappointed, vulnerable. This doesn't mean accepting toxic or abusive behavior, but being able to stay with each other through the full spectrum of human emotions without attacking or withdrawing. Perhaps the most important skill in emotional intelligence is the ability to self-regulate, returning to balance after being strongly triggered. This includes specific techniques like deep, slow breathing to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, signaling to your body that you're safe. Grounding by feeling the contact of your feet with the floor, or counting things you can see, hear, touch in your surroundings. Temporarily leaving stressful situations to regain perspective, with clear communication that you'll return to discuss when both are calmer. When you can self-regulate effectively, you no longer depend on your partner to soothe your emotions. This creates safe space for both to express real emotions without fear of breaking the other or being broken by their emotions. This is the foundation of authentic intimacy, the ability to be present with each other in the full spectrum of human emotions without needing to hide, control, or rescue each other. That's the power of mature love. Criterion 7, dare to be vulnerable. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Carl Jung. Vulnerability has become an overused keyword in the self-development world, but most people completely misunderstand it. They think it's sharing everything with everyone, telling painful stories to create sympathy, or expressing emotions without boundaries or discrimination. Jung understood that real vulnerability is a subtle art requiring high wisdom. It's not about sharing information about yourself but sharing yourself, your real fears, deep longings, and parts of your soul you usually hide from the world. The difference between real and fake intimacy is crucial to understand. Fake intimacy occurs when you tell about past wounds as a way to create drama, attract attention, or make others feel guilty. You share personal details but don't really allow others to see you in a raw and real state. This is often creating connection through trauma, feeling close because you share problems or difficulties. Real intimacy occurs when you allow someone to see you in unprepared moments, when you're not perfect, when you're struggling with something current. It's saying I'm scared instead of explaining at length why you're scared. It's expressing needs instead of expecting others to guess them. The problem with many women is they've been hurt in the past when they were vulnerable, rejected, ridiculed, taken advantage of, or betrayed when they opened up. So they learn to protect themselves by never really being fully present in relationships. They share stories about themselves but don't share themselves. They talk about emotions but don't allow others to feel the real impact of those emotions. Selective vulnerability isn't calculation or manipulation. It's understanding that not everyone deserves or can handle the deepest parts of you. You need to assess whether someone can hold your vulnerability carefully and respectfully. This requires observing how they treat others' vulnerability. Do they listen without judgment? Do they keep secrets? Do they use personal information to attack during arguments? Can they share deep things about themselves? The timing of vulnerability is also extremely important. Sharing too early can overwhelm others or create unhealthy bonding based on drama and intensity rather than real understanding. Sharing too late can make relationships shallow and distant, like two people living parallel but never really meeting. Jung believed that real love is the most powerful catalyst for personal transformation. When two people truly see each other, not edited and controlled versions but complete humans with lights and shadows, both are fundamentally changed. This requires enormous courage because you can't predict or control how others will react to the truth about you. This is one of love's greatest paradoxes. The safest relationships, where you never have to take real risks or feel uncertain, are often the least transformative. They're comfortable and predictable but don't help you grow into your best version. They're stable but lack depth and vitality. Conversely, real love requires a delicate balance between safety and challenge. You need enough safety to be vulnerable without fear of destruction, but also enough challenge and stimulation to continue growing and discovering new aspects of yourself. Signs of healthy vulnerability: you can say "I need" without feeling ashamed, guilty, or like you're being too demanding. You understand that having needs is completely normal and human. You can express when you're hurt or disappointed without needing to blame anyone, make anyone feel guilty, or punish them. You can share the impact their behavior had on you without making it a personal attack. You can share your deep fears and longings without needing immediate reassurance from your partner. You can tolerate uncertainty about how they'll react. You can accept that opening up always carries risk of rejection, misunderstanding, or being hurt, but you believe that risk is worth the chance for authentic love and understanding. Most importantly, you understand that vulnerability isn't a sign of weakness but strength. It takes tremendous courage to allow someone to see you completely, with all perfections and imperfections. And this kind of strength powerfully attracts people who are also brave and mature enough to be vulnerable. Criterion 8. Accept solitude. Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. Carl Jung distinguishing between loneliness and solitude is key to understanding this criterion and why it's so important in preparing for authentic love. Loneliness is an emotional state, feeling disconnected, misunderstood, or unable to share what's most important with anyone. Solitude is a physical state, simply being alone. This difference is extremely important because you can feel completely lonely in a crowd and completely peaceful when alone. Jung understood that the ability to be comfortable alone is a sign of psychological maturity and personal integrity. When you can truly enjoy your own company, not just tolerate but actually love private time, you no longer desperately need others to feel complete or valuable. This creates a completely different kind of attraction, the attraction of someone who doesn't need you to feel okay about themselves but chooses to be with you because they genuinely want to share life with you. There's a huge difference between I need you and I choose you, and that difference determines relationship quality. Many women fear being alone because they confuse it with being abandoned or unloved. But there's a big difference between choosing alone time to recharge, think, create, and connect with yourself, and being isolated because no one wants to be with you. A controversial but necessary perspective: some people genuinely need more alone time than others, and that's completely normal and healthy. Society often judges these people as having issues, afraid of commitment, or cold, but they may simply have different psychological structures and energy needs. Jung himself was a deep introvert and understood that such people recharge from stillness, contemplation, and solitary activities. Forcing them into relationships requiring constant presence and interaction can make them feel depleted and eventually withdraw to protect themselves. This doesn't mean they're incapable of deep love or long-term commitment. They just love differently, perhaps less frequent in external expression but deeper in quality, with focus on meaning rather than quantity of interactions. Your relationship with solitude also profoundly affects the type of partner you attract and are attracted to. If you're afraid to be alone, you'll likely attract people who also fear solitude and are looking for someone to complete them or fill emotional voids. This creates unhealthy codependent relationships where both fear and avoid independence. People who like having control or even manipulative tendencies, because they recognize you'll accept much inappropriate behavior to avoid being alone. People who lack strong identity or will, because they're comfortable dissolving into your needs and desires rather than maintaining boundaries and individual personality. Conversely, when you're truly comfortable being alone and have a rich life when single, you naturally attract people who also have rich personal lives and don't need someone else to feel complete or meaningful. People who respect personal space and understand the value of private time, time for self-development and pursuing individual passions. People who want to share life with you as a positive choice rather than as an escape from their own lives. I've met many women who spend years trying to learn to love being alone as if it's a difficult skill to master through effort and discipline. But for some people, this isn't something to learn but something completely natural and nourishing. The problem is they feel guilty about it because society constantly reminds them that humans are social animals and should always crave companionship. Accepting and loving solitude also means accepting that sometimes it's better to be alone than with the wrong person. But how do you know who's wrong? This is a complex question because the line between reasonable standards and unrealistic perfectionism is thin and often shifting. Jung would say the wrong person isn't necessarily someone with many flaws or problems, but someone whose presence makes you lose connection with yourself. If you constantly feel you must pretend or hide important parts of yourself to be accepted, if you frequently feel anxious, unsafe, or exhausted after being with them, if you can't share what's most important with them, then that's probably not the right person, no matter how good they look on paper. The ability to enjoy solitude also allows you to come to relationships from fullness rather than deficit. You're not looking for someone to save you from your life but to enrich an already relatively satisfying and meaningful life. This also means you can establish healthy boundaries in relationships without fear. You can say no when needed, can ask for private time without guilt, and can maintain independent interests and relationships without feeling like you're cheating on your partner. Criterion 9, ready for reciprocity. Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, there love is lacking. The one is the shadow of the other. Carl Jung. In modern dating culture, so much advice actually revolves around power rather than love. Don't be too available. Make them work for it. Wait 3 days to text back. Never be the first to initiate. All these tactics are based on the idea that love is a power game you must win rather than an authentic connection both create together. Jung understood that where there's real love, power becomes meaningless. And where people are trying to gain control or dominance, love cannot flourish. This is one of the most fundamental principles many people don't understand when entering the dating world. The problem with approaching love like a power game is it immediately creates competitive rather than cooperative dynamics. You're no longer trying to understand and connect with the other person, you're trying to win them. You're no longer concerned with building something beautiful together, you're concerned with ensuring you have the upper hand. The uncomfortable truth is much popular dating advice, especially advice for women, is actually subtle manipulation instruction. It teaches you to create artificial scarcity, trigger insecurity, make others prove their worth to you. These tactics might work short-term to attract attention, but they create an unhealthy foundation for any real relationship. Real reciprocity is completely different from keeping score or ensuring everything is always fair mechanically. It's not tracking who does what, who gives whom how much, or who owes whom what. Healthy reciprocity is a natural flow of giving and receiving based on love, care, and desire to make the other happy. In true reciprocity, giving feels natural and unforced. You don't do something to get back but because you want to express affection or because you see they need and you can help. Similarly, when you receive, you don't feel indebted or must repay immediately, but feel grateful and loved. But here's the subtle point, true reciprocity can only exist between two people who've developed self-awareness and aren't trying to use relationships to fill emotional gaps or satisfy unmet needs from the past. When someone is trying to prove their worth through excessive giving, or when someone is trying to control relationships through keeping score, true reciprocity becomes impossible. Instead, you have calculated exchange based on fear, insecurity, and need for control. One sign you're ready for true reciprocity is when you can give without hidden expectations or agendas. You can cook for someone because you want them to have a good meal, not because you want them to feel indebted. You can listen to them share about their bad day because you care about their feelings, not because you want them to listen to you afterward. Similarly, you can receive without feeling you must retaliate immediately. When someone does something nice for you, you can simply enjoy and feel grateful without pressure to do something equivalent right away. Reciprocity also means understanding that different people have different ways of expressing affection and contributing to relationships. One person might express love through cooking, another through listening, another through fixing broken things, another through sweet small gestures. Reciprocity means appreciating and valuing these different contributions rather than demanding everything have the same form. But there's a trap many women fall into: they give too much too soon, often from a place of wanting to be loved and accepted, then feel frustrated when their contributions aren't matched with equal intensity. This isn't reciprocity, it's using generosity as a strategy to control relationship outcomes. True reciprocity requires ability to communicate your needs and expectations directly rather than hoping giving will automatically create reciprocation. It requires ability to set boundaries about what you can and cannot contribute without feeling guilty or selfish. And most importantly, it requires understanding that in authentic love, the goal isn't ensuring you are not being taken advantage of but creating an environment where both can thrive and feel loved. This means sometimes you'll give more than you receive, and sometimes you'll receive more than you give. But over time, with the right person, things will balance naturally without calculation or force. Criterion 10. Learn from failed relationships. We cannot change anything unless we accept it. Carl Jung. There's a fundamental difference between learning from the past and being haunted by it. Many women fall into one of two extremes: either they try to completely forget past relationships and start fresh with each new person, or they let bad experiences dominate to the point where they can't trust or open up to anyone anymore. Jung understood both approaches are problematic. The past isn't something to get over or forget, but a valuable source of information about yourself, about your behavioral patterns, about what you truly need and don't need, and about how you can develop into a better partner. The important difference to understand is between mistakes and patterns. Mistakes are single decisions, possibly due to circumstances, lack of information, or simply bad luck. Patterns are behaviors repeated across multiple different relationships, often stemming from deep beliefs or fears you may not be conscious of. If you've been attracted 3 times in a row to people unwilling to commit, that's not bad luck. It's a pattern that needs exploration. If you always find yourself in the giver role in every relationship while your partner only receives, that's also not coincidence. It's important information about how you approach love and what you believe is necessary to be loved. One of the bitterest pills a woman might have to swallow is realizing she may have contributed to problems she complains about in relationships. This doesn't mean victim blaming or excusing others' bad behavior. It means recognizing every relationship has 2 people, and both bring their own patterns, needs, and defenses into it. Maybe you attract non-committal people because you fear real intimacy. Maybe you always fall into the mother role because you feel safer being needed than being loved equally. Maybe you create drama when things become too stable because you're used to love coming with stress and instability. The process of learning from failed relationships requires a different kind of courage to look in the mirror and see not just what others did wrong to you, but what you might have done to contribute to those problems. This doesn't mean self-blame or self-hatred. It means becoming an objective observer of yourself. When you look back at past relationships, instead of just focusing on what they did wrong, ask, why did I choose this person? What warning signs did I ignore? What unrealistic expectations did I have? Did I try to change them instead of accepting them as they really were? Did I communicate my needs or expect them to guess? Did I respect their boundaries or my own? These questions aren't easy, and answers might be painful. But they're also the only path to breaking repeating cycles and creating different relationships in the future. Another important part of learning from the past is understanding the difference between accepting and tolerating. Accepting means understanding and making peace with the real flaws and challenges of loving an imperfect human being. Tolerating means accepting disrespectful, harmful, or incompatible behavior with what you need to thrive. Learning to distinguish between these two is one of the most important skills in love. Everyone has flaws and annoying habits. The question isn't whether you can find someone perfect, but whether their flaws are things you can accept and even love as part of their whole person. But there are behaviors and attitudes you shouldn't and can't accept if you want a healthy relationship: lack of basic respect, inability to empathize or consider your perspective, refusal to engage in constructive conflict resolution, or unwillingness to grow and change when relationships require it. Learning from the past also means developing what Jung called a growth mindset about relationships. Instead of viewing relationships as tests you pass or fail, you view them as opportunities to learn and develop. Every relationship, successful or failed, teaches you something about yourself and about love. This doesn't mean you should stay in non-working relationships hoping they'll become good lessons. It means when a relationship ends, you take time to understand what it taught you before rushing into the next one. One of the most important lessons many women need to learn from failed relationships is when to try and when to let go. There's a difference between working through normal difficulties of loving a real person and trying to salvage a fundamentally incompatible or unhealthy relationship. Learning to recognize this difference requires brutal honesty about what's really happening instead of what you hope will happen. It requires ability to see patterns instead of just focusing on good moments. Finally, learning from the past means integrating all your experiences, both good and bad, into deeper understanding of love and yourself. Past relationships aren't failures or waste of time. They are teachers, steps on the path to becoming someone capable of loving and being loved authentically. Jung believed no experience in life is useless if we learn to extract wisdom from it. Every broken heart, every disappointment, every moment of realizing someone wasn't right for you, all contribute to who you become and the kind of love you can create. After exploring the 10 criteria Jung considered necessary, we return to the original question: when will a woman find her soulmate? The answer doesn't lie in a specific time on the calendar or a checklist you can complete. It lies in a state of being, a way of existing in the world that naturally attracts and nurtures authentic love. The right time isn't when you've become perfect or solved every problem in your life. It's when you've reached a certain level of inner integrity, when you know who you are, accept both your light and shadow, and no longer desperately need love to feel whole. It's when you can love someone because you want to share life with them, not because you need them to save you from your life. When you can give from fullness rather than deficit. When you can be vulnerable without losing yourself. Jung understood that mature love is completely different from teenage love or romantic illusions we often see celebrated. Mature love isn't about falling in love but choosing love each day. Not about finding the perfect other half but deciding to build something beautiful with another imperfect human. It's the kind of love where two people can see each other completely, with all fears, flaws, and unhealed wounds, and still choose to stay together. Not because they're perfect but because they're committed to the process of growing together. The final and perhaps most important paradox: being ready for authentic love means being ready not to have it. When you no longer desperately need love, when you can imagine a meaningful and happy life even when single, then you're truly free to love from an authentic place. This doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent to love. It means not letting the need to be loved control your choices. It means being able to say no to wrong love to keep space for right love. Questions for self-reflection: do you know who you really are when there's no one around to impress? Can you sit quietly with yourself in silence and feel peace? Do you have passions, goals, and relationships that create a meaningful life? Have you worked with past wounds to the point they no longer control your present choices? Can you see patterns in previous relationships and understand your role in them? Can you love someone for who they are rather than for what they can do for you? Can you be vulnerable without losing your boundaries or identity? If you can honestly answer yes to these questions, then perhaps you're more ready than you think. If not, then perhaps you need more inner work than you want to admit. And that's okay too. Because ultimately, the journey of becoming someone capable of loving and being loved authentically is the most important work you'll do in life, not just because it might lead to love, but because it leads to becoming the most complete version of yourself. And that person, whether they find love or not, will live a life worth living. Jung believed the goal of life isn't happiness but meaning. And perhaps there's no meaning deeper than becoming a human being capable of loving fully, yourself, others, and life with all its complexities and contradictions. That's when you're truly ready for love. Not when you've found it, but when you've become someone worthy of it.